Celebrities aren't above the law, and some celebs know that all too well. Hey guys, I'm your host Lauren, and today we're going to be counting down the top 10 celebrities you wouldn't expect to have been arrested. Number 10, we have Greta Thunberg. Greta, the famous climate change activist, was seen smiling as she was detained just this January. She, along with her fellow activists, were protesting the demolition of a village in Germany, which was set to take place to make room for a coal mine expansion. Thousands of people came out to protest, chanting, "Every village stays, and you're not alone." Greta was released not long after her initial arrest, following an identity check, and then immediately spoke to the press. She said at the time, "What everyone does matters. And if one of the largest polluters, like Germany, and one of the biggest historical emitters of CO2 is doing something like this, then of course it affects more or less everyone." Greta went on to say, "It's all very weird to see the German government, including the Green Party, make deals and compromise with companies like RWE, with fossil fuel companies, when they should rather be held accountable for all the damage and destruction they have caused." Number 9, we have Winona Ryder. Something that truly shocked fans was back in 2001 when Winona Ryder was caught shoplifting at Saks Fifth Avenue. Winona reportedly stole over $5,500 worth of merchandise and was found guilty of theft and vandalism in 2002. This whole scandal really threatened to derail her career, even though she was really at the height of her fame. Luckily, she was able to come back into the spotlight and return to acting just a few years later. She shared in an interview years after, "It wasn't like the crime of the century, but it allowed me time that I needed." She also explained that this really wasn't what it looked like, saying, "Psychologically, I must have been at a place I just needed to stop. I won't get into what happened, but it wasn't what people think." Number 8, we have A$AP Rocky. A$AP was arrested in 2019 after being accused of aggravated assault in Sweden, and it really only got more messy for him after that. Reportedly, there was a violent incident between him, his entourage, and 2 unknown men. He was placed in custody for 2 weeks, and rumors about the conditions of the prison started circulating. TMZ describes the prison as being shockingly inhumane, but A$AP's team claimed the star was actually being held in solitary confinement. After a couple weeks behind bars, Donald Trump got involved. He tweeted at the time that he was in communications with the Prime Minister of Sweden to get the rapper released. But it wasn't until he went to court weeks after the initial arrest that he was allowed to return home. This wasn't his only run-in with the law, though. Just last year, the star was arrested in LA International Airport in connection with a shooting that occurred in 2021. If convicted, he could face up to 14 years in jail for his part in the crime. Reportedly, he was released just hours later on a $550,000 bail. A$AP has a preliminary hearing sometime this year, so we'll have to wait and see what comes from this case. His lawyers seemed to be sure that A$AP didn't commit any crime, though. His lawyer said to the press in September, "Rocky didn't commit a crime. It was extortion attempted by a former associate who threatened to make false criminal accusations if Rocky didn't pay him." Going on to say, "What will become abundantly clear in the upcoming months is that based on facts and evidence, because he is innocent of these charges." Number 7, Sam Hunt. The country star who literally wrote a song called "Drinking Too Much" got caught just for that. Sam Hunt was arrested in 2019 for a DUI and having an open container in his car. He was taken into custody after the police got a call of a vehicle driving the wrong way. Luckily, no one was hurt, but reportedly the singer had bloodshot eyes and clearly smelled like alcohol. Allegedly, he was even struggling to give his license to the police and gave his credit card and passport instead. Court records, he was released on a $2,500 bond for his situation. He tweeted after the fact, writing, "Wednesday night I decided to drive myself home after drinking at a friend's show in downtown Nashville." Going on to write, "It was a poor and selfish decision, and I apologize to everyone who was unknowingly put at risk and let down by it. It won't happen again." While a few fans supported his decision to come clean and just apologize, others were still pretty upset he would do something so reckless. One Twitter user commented, "I can't believe all these people are defending this. I'm sure you'd feel different if your loved one had been hurt." Another added, "Complete piece of garbage, and he didn't learn his lesson. It will happen again, and he will hurt someone, and an undeserving family will suffer." Number 6, Hugh Grant. A few decades ago, Hugh Grant was making headlines for all the wrong reasons. Not long after making his 1995 film 9 Months, he found himself arrested in LA. He found himself in trouble with the law after doing some things we can't get too much into with a lady of the night, Divine Brown. Hugh recalls this embarrassing time in his life in an interview for People. He says, "There were very talented people who made the film and really brilliant actors. Only one booby who let them all down, and that was me. Not only was I terrible in the film, but I chose to get arrested in Hollywood a week before the film came out." One thing we can give Hugh though is that he didn't try to make excuses for his behavior. He made an appearance on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno and said, "I was just an idiot. I didn't try to say I've got a psychological problem. I just said I did it." He also added by saying, "You know in life what's a good thing to do and a bad thing to do, and I did a bad thing." Making matters worse is that Hugh actually was dating Elizabeth Hurley at the time, who ended up staying with him during this whole situation. The two ended up breaking up after 5 years, but insisted that they're still great friends today. Number 5, we have Shia Labeouf. Shia is no stranger to having issues with the law, with arrests spanning over 2 decades. His first arrest was in 1996 when he was just 9 years old and stole a pair of Nikes. His next arrest was just 2 years later when he stole a Game Boy from Kmart, claiming he was taken into custody for just 6 hours before being released. The next incident happened in 2007, which he later admitted was because he got into it with a neighbor, which led to spending 2 days behind bars. He said at the time, "While I was there, I at least understood that being in jail is not the move." But it wasn't long after that he was taken in by police again just later that same year. Allegedly, he refused to leave a Walgreens and was taken to a holding cell overnight. By 2008, he was arrested yet again for driving drunk throughout LA. According to People, he was making a left turn when he got into a car accident. Luckily, no one was hurt, but it still ended with him getting a misdemeanor DUI. His most famous arrest came in 2014 when he had a drunken meltdown while watching a Broadway musical. Reportedly, Shia was smoking cigarettes in the theater and shouting throughout the show. According to a source, he shouted at the officers, "Do you know my life? Do you know who I am?" and proceeded to spit on them, which forced the police to have to muzzle the actor. After this very public incident, Shia completed rehab and joked on Jimmy Kimmel Live, "I'm going to stay away from Broadway shows for a while." He ended up getting arrested twice more in 2015 and 2017 for drinking-related charges, but it doesn't stop there. His most recent trouble with the law came in 2020 when he was charged with a misdemeanor, battery, and petty theft, which involved the stealing of a man's hat during a fight. That same year, he was hit with an lawsuit involving an ex who decided to sue. Twigs and Shia dated for about a year. When asked about what she thought about the star, she shared, "What I went through with Shia was the worst thing I've ever been through in my life. I don't think people would ever think that it would happen to me, but I think that's the thing. It can happen to anybody." Now it seems he's got it a bit more together and taken on the role of a family man after having a child with his wife, Mia Goth. Number 4, we have Khloe Kardashian. 2007 was definitely not Khloe Kardashian's year. Khloe was arrested in California for driving under the influence and at first was only given community service as her punishment. Along with this, she was also ordered to go through an alcohol education course. Though she did complete the community service, she missed some sessions throughout her course. This resulted in her being sentenced to 30 days in jail and told to rejoin the treatment program. Luckily for her, the jail was having a problem with overcrowding at the time, and she was released after just less than 3 hours. Just before her release, her representative released a statement which said, "Khloe is ready and willing to serve out her sentence, no matter how long and where to have this resolved." Number 3, we have Martha Stewart. For Martha, this all began back in 2001 when a biopharmaceutical company called InformOverload failed to get FDA approval for a new pharmaceutical it was developing. One of the company's founders advised his friends and families to sell their stock, knowing its value would take a dive once this news became public. Martha was in his inner circle and took this advice. She sold 4,000 shares the day before the FDA made their announcement. She ended up saving herself $45,000, but of course this resulted in an investigation. She was charged and convicted of a number of financial crimes and in the end spent 5 months incarcerated in West Virginia. She was released in 2005 and had to spend 5 more months under house arrest in her home in Bedford, New York. When discussing her prison experience, Martha said in 2017, "It was horrifying, and no one should have to go through that kind of indignity except for murderers, and there are a few other categories. But no one should have to go through that. It's a very, very awful thing." Martha ended up getting pretty lucky though, because unlike others who end up in prison, she was able to have an incredible career comeback. Since her release, she has starred in The Apprentice, Martha Stewart, written several books, worked on the show Martha Stewart Living, set up her own brands of wine and frozen food, and even developed a pretty famous friendship with Snoop Dogg. Not only that, but during her time in prison, the value of her company's stock doubled, and she became a billionaire once again by 2006. Honestly, there aren't many celebrities who have had a comeback quite like Martha's. Number 2. Bruno Mars. Bruno found himself in pretty hot water after being arrested after his performance at the Hard Rock Hotel Casino back in 2010. Reportedly, he was arrested because of having an illegal substance in his possession. After being caught, he allegedly admitted to it right away. According to reports, Bruno said to the officer, "Can I speak to you honestly, sir?" He then went on to say he did a foolish thing and has never used before. Fortunately for the star, he was released after just a few hours. According to the BBC, he accepted a fine of $2,000, 12 months of probation, and some community service for this mistake to get off his record. He did admit later that he felt regret for this incident and shared in an interview, "I was a young man and I was in effing Vegas. I wasn't thinking. I try every day to forget and just keep pushing." His mugshot did end up hitting the news though, with CNN noting that he was smiling like he was at the Grammy Awards. Years later, Bruno claims that he can't explain why he was smiling and said, "I have no idea. It was a picture." Fortunately for the star, this didn't ruin his career and actually seems to have scared him straight. Bruno hasn't seemed to have any trouble with the law since his 2010 situation. And at number 1, we have Reese Witherspoon. Someone who many wouldn't expect to have trouble with the law is Reese Witherspoon. Reese was arrested for disorderly conduct after she refused to stay in the car while her husband was giving a sobriety test. Not only that, but she got pretty upset at the officer. She was quoted saying, "Do you know my name? You're about to find out who I am, and you're about to be on national news." After this incident, the actress released a statement and said, "I clearly had one drink too many and I'm deeply embarrassed about the things I said." Going on to say, "I was disrespectful to the officer who was just doing his job. I have nothing but respect for the police and I'm very sorry for my behavior." The whole event had a very little impact on her career and was just an unfortunate slip. Well, that's all we have for you guys today. Let us know in the comments which celebrity arrest shocked you the most, and we'll see you in the next one.